first of all, they're trying to see who's got the toughest border, who can control their border. And the other thing, if you look at the geography of Ethiopia, it's landlocked. And they got to go through French Djibouti. Where's my French friend here? Tout, non? Oui. Oui, d'accord. C'est nécessaire de passer à Djibouti pour arriver à la porte. For Ethiopia, that's not a good deal. So maybe if they control Eritrea too, they can get down to the port. Anyway, it was a stalemate. A lot of people died. The village is still there. I have no idea who controls it today. Okay. Let's pause for a second. We're going to switch to globalization. Why don't you turn the light on and stand up for a minute and just take a deep breath? You want to?
I'm doing it.
You don't want to? Don't have to. Okay, we're going to pause. Yeah. How are you doing? I'm not done yet. You can't leave. We're only halfway done.
I'm not leaving.
Well, take all your cultural credit papers and tear them up.
We were in Spain.
I signed one. One of your students signed it.
The guys on the corner with their black hats. And it was an insurance group, and they said, don't say anything bad about Franco. And one of them did.
Hey
So you had
Bob,
to go
while
down
we're
and get
here
him
at the parade,
Where were you in
is
Spain?
anybody doing cultural credit? Is
Torremolinos.
anybody here? No, okay. Is anybody here managing the cultural credit?
You're here
Okay.
for
You're here for it, so I'll pass around a piece of paper
Yes, we should do that.
and,
It's I was talking to my
Globalization. What is it? Holler it up. No? You've had your floor time? Now you need somebody else. ¿Qué cosa? Globalization.
So,
Spanish or English?
English. So I guess globalization is just the increasing interaction and connections between countries.
Did you see my slide?
No.
Did you get that? Connections between countries. You could write a book about the definition of this thing, but to make it short, because I mean, you know, you're not here, you didn't read your Bible. Okay. So it's connections between countries. Does that make sense? Have you been globalized? Raise your hand if you've been globalized. Raise your hand if you haven't been globalized. Good. That's the kind of person I admire. Someone who goes against the crowd. I know a lot of you didn't raise your hands. You didn't raise your hand. And so you haven't been globalized, or you haven't globalized, or you're not awake, or you are awake. And he says he hasn't been globalized. So you that said you were globalized, what does that mean? Michael, you've been globalized? Okay, yeah, he's been globalized. Tell me how.
Well, I'm an international student, so I guess
Yeah, tell me where you're from.
I'm from Argentina. So studying in another country.
Speak louder, I want everybody to hear you up in the front here.
Studying in another country, I guess it's part of cultural exchange, which is a part of globalization.
Yeah, you're globalized right where you're sitting. Because you've got people from all of these different countries sitting right here. We got any Native Americans here? Well then, okay, we got a room of immigrants. Okay.
Don't tell it.
Yeah, if you don't have your documents, keep it low. All right, so what is globalization? To go back to what you said, sono de acuerdo. It is connections between countries. I'm going to look at three things. You could look at 20, but let's just look at three. People, money, and ideas/culture, and that's when we get to what I learned from Dr. Nyland about hip-hop. And I am going to demonstrate it. Okay, people, tourists, migrants. Remember, globalization, think of two arrows. We're talking about Africa. You've probably heard the movie Out of Africa or the book. Think of two arrows. Out of Africa, into Africa. You draw two arrows, you got globalization, we got the theme we're going to hit. Okay? People. I'm going to ask you, as we go along, on those 3 points, whether Africa is a winner or a loser, okay? On those 3 points. People, money, and ideas and culture. You'll decide. I'm not going to tell you. Early negative globalization in Africa. What do you think it was? I mean, if you want to read it, you can read it.
Globalization
Yes.
and slavery. I mean, I would say the extraction and exploitation of resources, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Africa has been globalized so many times in so bad ways over the years, you know. And it's exactly what she said. It's the people you had, by the way, just anecdotally for those that are studying Africa, when you start studying slavery, please remember that slavery didn't begin with the colonialists. It began with the Africans. They Africanized, I mean, they slaverized? That's not a word. Forget that. They enslaved their people. They did. Different kinds of slavery. Some of them wasn't too bad, some was bad. But they started the slavery. Then the Arabs came, then the Christians came and others. Okay. Money. You're probably all familiar with the term mercantilism, and I'm sure you could probably define it better than I do, but basically trying to have your economy strong at the expense of others. So Africa was a place to suck up the resources, remember? So that was when the negative globalization happened, and I just couldn't resist this clip art. Can you read it? Early globalization, major powers plundering Africa and other regions, by the way. Get what they can.
What do they say? What do they say that we can't read? On the people, what do they say?
Oh my God, we got the same thing over there.
What do they say? On there, we can't read it from here. We're back on the people. On the
Yes,
people.
what's written on the back of their bags there?
British grab bag, German grab bag, Russian grab bag. It's just an artist's concept. You could put Chinese grab bag and others. Just taking what they can, not building anything up. By the way, just an anecdotal thing. Sometimes when I'm teaching about African history or politics, I draw a cross with a gun hanging off it. Why would I do that? Was it Matt, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What? Why would I draw a cross and a gun hanging off the cross?
Because the spread of Christianity is fine.
Yeah. Christianity. Well, I'm not suggesting that priests came to Africa with machine guns. But, what? Religion. And
The established religions resisted the arrival of the new one. The established religions resisted the arrival.
trying to give everybody a chance. Don't tell her. He's doing great. If I'm stuck, I'm gonna call him. What do you think about this crossing gun?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of conversion is also undertaken with, violent means. Like you could be denied services. A lot of aid groups, even like today, might deny you services if you don't have, if you don't ascribe to whatever it is the religion is that they're
Ooh, that sounds really nasty.
screwed.
Well, it probably is true. Do you ever heard the Harry Belafonte song from years ago? And you hear it sometimes, and he goes down, he's in Jamaica, I think, and he's going down, and he's very poor, and he's very hungry, and he goes into this missionary soup kitchen or something, and he's reaching for the soup, and the people say, you gotta pray, brother, pray first, you gotta pray, brother. So you gotta do your prayers, then you get your soup. Well, you're on to it. And maybe I would explain it slightly differently, but the military, especially with the Gatling gun, which is a machine gun, was powerful, and they could take over countries with very few people. But the missionaries were there. And I honestly don't know, this is an area you might want to research. Did the missionaries ever say to the guys with the Gatling guns who were mowing down people, maybe you shouldn't do that? I never really thought about that. But the missionaries came in the wake with the military. It was the gun and it was the cross that basically colonized Africa. Okay? Well, you just getting ready to bid, or you got a question?
Fine.
Okay. So, this is where I need to use this. Going out of Africa, I'm going to do the out of Africa first, then the in Africa. Going out of Africa, you got migration and you got brain drain. Okay? Two things for sure. But let's look at this one if we can get it. because a lot of people are moving out of Africa, or trying.
Longhorn's dinner for two.
And this has nothing to do with Africa at all. But it certainly looks good.
Plus two
We got
sides, two
6 more
salads, a
seconds
shared
of that.
appetizer or dessert. Dinner for two. Only at Longhorn Steakhouse. You can't fake steak.
You're all gonna move on, huh? This is
More
Melilla,
than 200 African
enclave of
migrants
Spain,
have scaled the border
in the northern
fence
part
into
of
the
Morocco.
Spanish enclave of Melilla. It's the biggest assault on the border in more than 8 years. The new arrivals, many from Cameroon and Guinea, headed towards the migrant reception centre, celebrating touching European soil. The Spanish territories of Melilla and Ceuta in northern Morocco provide the only land borders between Africa and the European Union. The latest incursion at Melilla brings the number of migrants who've successfully scaled the fence to almost 600 so far this year.
You ever seen you guys so happy to go into detention?
Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy has appealed for help from Europe to deal with illegal immigration. He says Brussels should step up support for countries like Spain that have territory
These
on
guys
the
are ready
EU's
to jump.
borders.
I think that's probably not. That's right at the end. I got another one, which is another group. This other group, and I want to put the joking aside for a minute because thousands of people are drowning in the Mediterranean.
Right now, yeah.
It could be as high as 10,000, maybe more, over the years. These are Africans who are trying to get to Europe. Now, they have two reasons. One is political asylum, because the country where they're in is treating them so badly that they want to exercise their international right to claim political asylum and live a new life. And live. The others are looking for jobs. And they're probably going to get turned down when they do their paperwork, and many of them slip into the illegal category, as it happens in this country too. But this is a very serious human rights issue. I'm spending time in Italy because I love Italy, but I'm also researching Africa because I love Africans. And it's a sad issue. It's very sad, and it's getting worse in some ways. They come in little tiny boats, and there's deaths almost every week.
19 migrants have died, reportedly by suffocating, aboard a crowded boat traveling from North Africa to Italy.
These are the
migrants
roots.
are thought
Some
to
of the
have
roots.
choked on fumes from an old engine while
Africa's
they were
on the move.
confined
It's
below
migrating
deck,
to Europe in
Italian
some
news
way.
agency ANSA reports. Rescuers found 18 people in a tangle of bodies. Another person is said to have died during the evacuation. The boat was carrying some 600 people. Italy is struggling to cope with the rising flow of migrants to its shores. Many of them make the dangerous crossing from Africa on crowded and unseaworthy vessels, says the BBC's
Look how
Rome
packed they are.
correspondent,
The vessels
Alan
turn over,
Johnston.
or they
The
run
boat
out of
in the
fuel.
latest incident was heading for the Italian island of Lampedusa.
This is a
It
2-minute
was
thing.
intercepted after it sent out an SOS signal. 2 passengers from the boat have been taken for treatment to a hospital in Sicily. In the past month, at least 45 migrants have died in similar circumstances as a result of being crushed or asphyxiated aboard overcrowded boats. On Friday, ANSA reported that migrants rescued by a merchant ship this week had spoken of a shipwreck in which 60 people had drowned. There has recently been a huge rise in the number of migrants trying to cross the Mediterranean to Italy. European Union Border Agency Frontex says almost 60,000 migrants have already landed in southern Italy this year. Most are from Africa or the Middle East and pay large sums to smugglers in Libya and Tunisia, who transport them in unsafe fishing vessels. Officials say Libya's continuing political instability is partly to blame for the rise. Italy, which bears the brunt of migrants making the crossing, launched a rescue operation in the Mediterranean last year and has repeatedly appealed for the European Union's help to tackle the problem.
Now I'll tell you the sad follow-up to that. is that there have been more people died in the last couple of weeks, quite a few. And they said that the Italian government had gone out to rescue them. For a long time, the Italian government was going, we don't see them, and they were drowning. And finally, when 300 died in about a week, about a year ago, they said, okay, that's enough. You know, they're Italian. I mean, you know, they have a passion for life. So they decided to go out and look for them. If they're in trouble, they bring them in. But they said, we can't pay for this all the time. And the European Union said, you should do your best. We'll come and help you. But they didn't. Finally, the Italians said, that's it. We're no longer going out and looking. If they get within 30 miles, okay, we'll help them. But there's a good 70 miles from the nearest shore to the nearest island, Lampedusa. And so they're still dying. The European Union's talking a good game and doing very little. So that's back to borders. And it's out migration, it's globalization. People are leaving Africa for other reasons. Human trafficking. It's not, I don't think, the major area of human trafficking origin. But when I was in Italy, I found that there was a lot of information about Naples. There's prostitution rings run by human traffickers, and they even rent some of the women, the Ghanaians come in and rent some of the women from that group to go to another part in southern Italy, bring them back after the week. Now some of these girls know what they're getting into, but others don't. They're promised jobs. You know, you probably know more about human trafficking than you used to. It's become one of the fastest growing illicit businesses in America today. Even in our town of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, we have one case. So that's another portion. Now the other part is brain drain. This guy is smart. I've known him for years. I used to interview him. Kalestis Juma, he's a Harvard professor. I believe he's in genetics. And he's in Harvard. He's not in Kenya. Why? Oh, just guess. Yes.
Because that's what brain drain does. Like people that get the chance to be educated, they go somewhere else because they think they're going to have better opportunities.
Yeah, okay. Yes?
I agree with what she said.
I like what she said. Did you hear her? Yeah, well, no, it's true. But why do you think people do go, when he loves his country, by the way? Well, one day I asked him when we were driving home, I said, Juma, what's your main concern? It was a time of human rights. I thought he was going to say, human rights. No. You know what he said? Putting food on my table. Just putting food on my table. Well, he's putting food on his table. He's doing well. But that's globalization. It's an attraction away from Africa as well as to Africa. And finally, the attraction to Africa. How many people would like to go on a safari in Africa? Seriously. I mean, if you had the money, would you go? Yeah, I mean, you know, that's one of the things. And you've done it. And it's wonderful. There's nothing like coming around the curve just at sunset and finding a dozen lions lying, having eaten and just lying, and you get so close, you almost competitively, you don't want to pet them. I got out of one of those vehicles one time before I knew much about African lions and started walking towards a little pond. I thought, that's so pretty. Our guide got up on top of the car and he said, stop! And I froze just like that. He said, back up! And we backed up. As we started to back up, about the distance from Voldemar and me, in the bushes, which were next to the pond, I didn't see, 2 lions got up and went the other way. So I'm here today. But it's wonderful. It's just beautiful. And tourists, listen, in spite of all the problems of Kenya, where the shopping center was taken over by Al-Shabaab in a 4-day shootout, which should have lasted only a couple hours, but the police were outside saying, we're making plans. You know? And a couple of guys with revolvers finally went in and cleared out the rest of the people. And in spite of a few other things, the tourists are flooding into Africa every day. State Department advises not to go. They go anyway. They get met at the airport by safari companies. They go to their nice hotels. They go see the game parks. They come back. They get on a plane, they go home, they have wonderful things to show their friends. They know absolutely nothing about Africa. Which would be a problem for you guys, but not for them. Give them a break. Your parents, your uncles, you know, all they want to do is see the elephants, you know, so that you can still do that. But if you want to go, you got to get off the tourist circuit and see things. When my students go down to Mexico, and some of them even go on a family cruise, I tell them, don't go out the front door of the hotel, go out the back door. See the country, you know. Other people go, aid workers. Somebody said, hey, back here, I think you said want to go work in the government maybe. Embassy work, that's good work. Missionaries. I still can't quite figure out missionaries because there's a lot of religions in Africa and a lot of people have religions. But then I have trouble understanding missionaries anywhere. So I guess Africa is just another thing. But by the way, they do a lot of good health work and things like that. Don't count them out. Non-government organizations, NGOs, U.S. military. Did you know, be honest with me, did you know the military, American military, is slowly building up a presence all over Africa?